Hey guys, welcome back to Forza Motorsport. In case you missed it, I recently posted in the Discord about the series we're going to be making for tuning, and we're going to start with this video. One video doing a quick summary of everything you need to know about tuning to feel safer to begin tuning your own cars. I'll be covering my methods and giving you ways of doing your own cars and discovering your own style of builds and tuning. So let's begin by showcasing the car we're going to start with today. But before that, be sure to subscribe with post notifications so that you don't miss any future tuning guides and any tunes that I may share. And be sure to comment what helps if I need to explain anything further. And also check out the link tree with our Discord, Patreon, as Patreon members gain early access to these videos, and our Twitch and other socials that we use. Let's jump into the video. Here is our 2017 Ford Focus RS. I have got it up to level 50 to be able to upgrade and tune it for anything I want, but we'll be starting small with upgrades first. So let's head to upgrades and tune, performance, and here is the new UI again for custom upgrades. This is slightly different from past Forzas, so instead of just everything relating to power being under the engine tab, we have fuel and air, then we have engine, then we have platform and handling. The tires and wheels tab is now separated, but everything else is pretty much the same other than those in here. So if you're new to Forza, you're probably thinking, okay, what is the best upgrades and how does it affect the car? And this question is a pretty difficult one, as upgrades can be very different from person to person. But generally for a race car, we want to focus on power and grip, and the best way to find more power is under the conversions tab. Engine swapping is pretty big for most cars in Forza, as putting in a 6.2-litre V8 or a 7.0-litre V12 is almost always gonna be beneficial for power. But sometimes, if not most of the time, you might not be able to do the engine swap for the specific class you want, at least in this Forza. Older Forzas I almost always engine swap, it's just simpler. But now we have to level up the car to get these. So today's build is an introduction into building and tuning yourself. We are not going to be doing any engine swaps, drivetrain swaps, nor adding the body kit. We are going to build this car from what we have. In this Forza it is very slow to upgrade and build cars, but let's begin with picking the class. Next to my face camera is the current PI. As you see on the left, this car completely stock is a B class 535 PI car, so almost the middle of B class. Now I'm not gonna get into downgrading, as that's something a lot of cars can do in this game. But we are going to build this car for a class racing, not drag racing, not drifting, just a simpler class race car. So again, typically I would start with engine swapping. Chances are if you're watching this video as it released, you don't feel like spending the time to fully upgrade a car so that you have the CP and levels to do so, and I don't blame you. So we'll be taking a look at the current stats by pressing Y on the controller or R to toggle details until we come to this page, the car stats. This is what we really want to look at. Here we see we have 350 horsepower, 350 pounds of torque, and the car weighs 3,446 pounds. So we're going for a very easy but fun, safe car to race with, meaning we don't want to focus on one specific side. We want decent grip and decent power. For A class, by the way, I just figured out how to make it sounds more like A than saying a something. Lol, we'll need more power than that. Typically I think about 450 to 700 horsepower is typical. I might be wrong, but somewhere around there. For a safe build we'll see what we reach, but basically we want to get more power, less weight, bigger tires for more grip. So if you've leveled up the car a bit, we'll really start with the weight. Making the car lighter is the easiest way to increase acceleration, grip, and cornering speed. This weight isn't horrifically heavy, but this is a pretty heavy car. So let's see about weight reduction under platform and handling. So as you see here, race weight reduction costs an entire 1000 CP, and increases our PI by 72 points. Each class has a max PI. B class is from 501 to 600, A class is from 601 to 700, so it's about balance. Is 600 pounds worth it? Yes, it really is, especially considering how low in A class we are right now. That's a lot of acceleration and speed through turns gained for not a whole lot. But now we're at 607 and we need to reach 700 even or around there. Next we should look at upgrading the brakes, anti-roll bars, springs, and transmission. We have so much PI left we can definitely afford it, because this isn't the most insane car in building. This is a fast yet easy to drive car in building. It's not gonna compete against rival times, but this will win some races. We should also upgrade the differential. It literally doesn't cost PI, but it lets you control how the power is put to the ground and how the power is split. Also we need to quickly talk about transmission. So in normal Forza games most people would use sport transmission unless the gear ratios are just horrific, and that wasn't very common. Well, in Forza Motorsport the transmission now has more benefits. If you drive manual with clutch you will know that now you can actually miss gears if you're too fast with the shifting. So this depends on what you want to do for your driving style. If you use manual without clutch, typically you might not even need the transmission upgrade. But keep in mind upgrading to a sport transmission makes shifting faster, and lets you adjust the final drive. In this game the big thing is the race transmission, as now it's like putting a proper dog box transmission in, where you can flat foot shift, and you don't even need to use the clutch to shift, only off the line and to shift from first gear to reverse, or reverse to first. But all the rest you don't need to press the clutch. Sport doesn't do this. Sport is like a normal H-pattern shifter, so keep that in mind when you're upgrading your car. A race transmission is super beneficial to have, because you cannot miss shifts, and you can control the individual gear ratios. But now we have everything that we need handling wise, and we're still not halfway to the max PI. Now is a game of plug and play. This is really what you decide, if you want more grip, more power, or do a super balanced build. So we're much lighter than we was, so let's look at tires. My game froze for a second there. Interesting. Anyways, so the big upgrade is the tire compound. This just overall more grip, so we're already on street tires. If you're new to Forza, every Forza game has multiple tire compounds even if you cannot see them. For example, the stock tires on this car are not true stock tires. These are street tires. I know this because the next upgrade is sport tires. Or if you come in here, and all you see is the drag tire compound, then that means that car is already on race tires. And quickly drag tires are not meant for racing. Sometimes they might say they add more grip, and while they do, that grip is for straight line. The second you try to take a turn you'll understeer into the wall. For a race car don't use drag tires unless you're memeing and planning on wrecking into the wall or being super slow in the corners. So back to upgrading, we're on street tires. Typically I might even keep the stock tire compound on, but for a safe build we're going to go up to sport or race. I'm thinking sport as I want more power, but race tires will make it super grippy around the track, leading to faster cornering speed, leading to faster lap times. All power will do is make you faster in the straights, meaning if we had two of this car with the same upgrades except one had more grip and one had more power, the car with more grip will win on short tracks with a lot of turns, while the car with more power will win on long tracks with very few turns. It just depends on what tracks and racing you're doing, but I can safely say sport tires should be fine for a class. Next we'll look at tire width. Overall upgrading the tire width will help. A wider tire means more contact surface leading to less chance of spinning. But a better tire compound means the tires are more sticky and will stick to the road better. And now we have two choices, because the way I went through this car I already have all the tunable parts, and I have already increased grip quite a lot, meaning all I have now is power. But there is also one more thing we can look at for 99% of cars: aero and appearance, specifically the rear wing and front bumper. These will give us the option to equip adjustable aero parts. The rear bumper and hood is cosmetic, but can save weight, or increase weight. Anyways, I like to think of the tires being the overall grip of the car, but mostly for low-speed cornering. Aero parts is where you get your high-speed cornering. A car with more downforce can turn significantly faster at high speeds. But the issue with downforce is that more downforce means more air pressure pushing the car into the road, meaning more drag on the car, meaning slower acceleration and top speed. I want to mention this as a side thought, as typically putting on aero can only help you. So I think we're gonna put the aero on this car. But no, a car without race aero doesn't mean it's slow. In fact, it'll keep up in the straights and low speed corners. Your main gain from a big wing and front splitter is that you're gonna corner better at high speeds. And now all we have is engine upgrades. So again, I already stated that they kinda split this up. So fuel and air is engine upgrades. Think of it more like fuel and air is top of the engine. These are like bolt-on parts. They definitely increase power and make the engine run better. But the actual engine tab is like the internals of the engine. So as for how you choose your engine upgrades depends on the PI. But typically the big upgrades are as following: exhaust, air filter, turbo/supercharger, camshaft, pistons and compression, and displacement. Just because these are the big upgrades doesn't mean don't use the others. These are just the most power for the PI use. Typically there is no set way of upgrading the engine. Just mess around, see what upgrades gives you the most power and least weight possible, as upgrading the engine does also give some weight reduction. And then it was a little bit of testing and seeing what will put me into the top of the class I want. This is most likely the simplest way of building I can think of, and it is fairly efficient. And now we'll apply and head out to the track to begin part 2 of today's introducing into tuning, the actual tuning part. Alright, we're here in the pits at Suzuka Full Circuit, by ourselves in a test drive event so we can tune. Before we go into the track there is a couple things we can go ahead and do before we go on the track. Firstly we can fix the fucking tire pressure. This genuinely annoys me so much. I don't get why the default tire pressures are so screwed up in this new Forza, but every tune I've done so far has had stupidly high tire pressures and they're not even balanced. I don't know why, but every car you do you can automatically set it to 28. This is just the best way to begin the test drive without it feeling weird for no reason. And now we'll take a quick test drive, and see how it feels. We're going to do a full lap of this. I will stop at the finish line then do a dig. Rolling starts don't help me figure out the gearing, and typically online races aren't rolling starts, they're from a dig. So why does test drive make you do a rolling start? I don't know. I don't know why it's dropping frames, but don't worry about it. So let's quickly talk about that. So the car was very understeery in a lot of places, but otherwise it handled fine. So technically we only need to make small changes. So for you, if you're new to Forza, I'll give you the quick rundown of how to tune everything. We'll quickly show off a base tune for all-wheel drive cars. Then I will begin a couple other videos, so let's begin. So the quick version of the tire pressure. A lower tire pressure is good, but too low tire pressure will make the tire heat up super quick and it won't have as much grip as it could potentially have, meaning the higher the tire pressure in the way the more grip it could have, but it won't heat up as fast to get that grip. A lower tire pressure limits the potential grip but makes it heat up faster. Overall, sticking around 24 to 28 psi is pretty safe. Under gearing we have the final drive, then our gear ratios for individual gears. Because we have a race transmission, a sport transmission would only have the final drive. Moving towards acceleration in theory increases acceleration, but moving towards speed increases the top speed, so you need to find the right balance. I highly suggest tuning this per track, but the quick way to have your base tune gearing is to find the overall top speed. The fastest this car can do is 173.7 miles per hour, and if I move the slider any more left, the gear line in the bottom left will be off of the graph. meaning we want to slide this right to increase acceleration as we are not getting the full potential out of the gears. So let's slide it right until the final drive says 170. For some reason in this game the speeds per gear isn't fully accurate, but we should be close enough by setting our final drive max speed close to the estimated top speed. I personally choose a little lower. So since this is 173, I round down to 170. If it was 179, I would set my final drive speed to 175 or 180. Because I forgot to say, reading the description on the right side will also help you with this a lot. But basically for the camber, this is the angle of the bottom of the tires, meaning more camber controls how spaced out the bottom of the tires are. Negative camber is when you spread the bottom of the tires out more, meaning making the top of the tires closer. This is typically what you do, as positive camber just isn't helpful. It has some moments, but you really only need to worry about not sliding to the right, either 0.0 or negative, unless you have a specific purpose. But so this depends on factors. The easiest way I can simplify this, I would stick between -0.1 and -2.5 at most, for the front, and 0.0 to -1.5 for the rear. Toe controls the in and out of the tire, so with toe out you're spreading the front of the tire outwards, meaning the front of the tires will face out more. Toe in makes the turns face more inwards. Of course the graphic doesn't show it, but when we go into a detailed video, I'll cover this later. The safe bet is between positive 0.0 to 1.0, again that is toe out, and for the rear is 0.0 to -0.5. You shouldn't need more than that, and you don't toe out the rear of race cars, that's more for drifting. As for caster, the description on the right explains it well. I would stick between 5.0 and 7.0, mostly 7.0. Almost all my cars use 7.0 caster. The anti-roll bars control your turn in on corner entry and how much the right can move from the left, etc. Because this is all-wheel drive, it tends to understeer really hard, so having the rear anti-roll bar stiffer than the front or having the front anti-roll bar softer than the rear will create oversteer, and this is what we want because all-wheel drive has natural understeer. This is something you just have to play with. But from my years of experience I know what I'm gonna set this tune. But in short, if you're having too much corner entry understeer, soften the front or stiffen the rear. If you're having corner entry oversteer, stiffen the front or soften the rear. The springs control the ride height, and also control how soft or stiff the suspension overall feels. A too soft suspension will be super floaty and go over bumps easy, but won't be as responsive as a stiff suspension. Soft suspension, also too soft suspension will make the car bottom out if it's savely soft. But basically the way you should tune this yourself is setting the front and rear to the same value, and drive over some bumps, do some turns, and see how the stiffness feels. If it feels too stiff, soften it. If it feels too soft, stiffen it. But make sure you also keep in mind your ride height, as if you end up with a soft suspension without checking to make sure the car doesn't bottom out, you'll have a lot of problems. But once you find the stiffness you want, this also controls the mid-corner balance. If you're getting too much understeer in the mid-corner, soften the front spring or stiffen the rear spring. If you're having too much oversteer in the mid-corner, stiffen the front sprint or soften the rear spring. Damping refers to the shocks. Bump stiffness, by the way, these are upside down for some reason. But bump stiffness controls the allowed force to push the tire up into the wheel while allowing the suspension to compress, and the rebound stiffness controls the force that pushes the wheels out of the wheel well towards the ground, allowing the suspension to decompress. So typically you want a low bump stiffness and a higher rebound stiffness. Almost every car you can use 3.0, 2.0, 9.0, 8.0 from top to bottom. But yeah, don't touch this lol. Now the downforce. There is many ways of doing this. I highly suggest finding the max and minimum aero and choosing a value both front and rear can give that is somewhere in the middle for a super safe build. For this car it's gonna be 230. The brake balance refers to where the majority of your force is going to go, more towards the front or rear. If you find you turn a lot while braking and it causes you to go straight off the road, move towards the rear. Or if you find you brake a lot in the straight and it's causing you to oversteer under braking, move it towards the front. I wouldn't go past 10% either way, meaning between 60% and 40% balance. And for pressure, it's the pressure of the brakes. I wouldn't go further than 80% and 170%. Personally I use 135%. The differential, so front and rear controls how locked or unlocked. There's multiple ways to say this, but basically the higher the values the more locked, meaning both tires for that side will want to spin at the same rate. Acceleration handles the lock when you're on the throttle, meaning 100% acceleration will make both tires spin at the same rate, where 100% deceleration means it will have more rolling resistance, causing you to slow down off throttle quicker without pressing the brakes. Safe values are between 10 and 50% front acceleration, 0% to 20% front deceleration, 40 to 75% rear acceleration, 25 to 40% rear deceleration. The center balance is the same as the brakes, but with the diff more towards the rear it will drive more like a rear wheel drive, more towards the front it will drive more like a front wheel drive. Safe values are between 60 to 80%. If you prefer front wheel drives, the most I would go is 35%. Anymore the back tires just don't do anything in most cars. And now we're gonna go back to suspension geometry because I skipped it for the funny, but technically you need to figure out everything else with the tune. Then you can go back to suspension geometry. So now roll center height offset, this acts more like roll bars. I don't have safe values, I'm still learning it myself, but I have noticed even one click, so 0.4 inches will make an incredible change. But basically I would use this tune for specific tracks. The higher you set this the more responsive and oversteer it'll have, and the lower you set this the less responsive it'll be, but it'll make more understeer. As for anti-geometry percent, I don't know, I've tested about 500 theories at this point and it's like the same value has 8 different results. I cannot make sense of this, and everyone else skipped over this too. All I know is if you turn these up it'll feel like your suspension is stiffer, and if you turn them down it'll feel like they're softer. But also, like, if you turn the front up you have to turn the rear up, and somehow even with the same balance that causes oversteer. But if you turn the front up without turning the rear up that causes understeer. I don't get it, I gotta figure it out. But that's my best attempt and theory so far. If anyone knows how you're actually supposed to use these for Forza, I would like to hear it and see it being used. But honestly I just leave them stock and mess with everything else, lol. And now we'll take this same car around the track to see the finished result after this long tuning guide. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope this helps everyone begin their tuning adventure and trying to develop their own tuning styles and builds. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe with post notifications so that you don't miss any future content or guides. Leave any comments or questions in the comments section, and if you have tips tricks you wanna share, also leave them there for others. You can also check out the link tree with our Discord and Twitch to hang out. Be a part of the community and improve racing or drifting or becoming a better tuner. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night/day.